I never thought a simple buzz from a phone would destroy my entire world. But that's exactly what happened on a Tuesday evening that started out perfectly normal and ended with me standing in my living room, watching my husband's face turn the color of a ghost. The doorbell rang, cutting through our apartment like an alarm I couldn't silence. Brandon froze right in the middle of the living room, and I watched every drop of blood drain from his face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out, just this horrible silence that filled the space between us. Behind him, the kitchen timer kept beeping over and over, reminding us that the dinner he'd been making was burning. But he didn't move. He couldn't move. He just stared at that door like it was about to explode and take everything we'd built together with it. I stood near the couch, my phone still in my hand, watching him. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I knew exactly who was on the other side of that door, and from the pure terror written all over Brandon's face, he knew too. But neither of us was prepared for who was actually standing out there in the hallway. Let me back up. 3 hours earlier, everything was fine. Or at least, I thought it was fine. That's the thing about betrayal. It's happening right under your nose while you're busy believing everything is normal. Brandon came home from work at 6 o'clock, same as always. He walked through the door carrying his briefcase, his tie loosened around his neck, talking about how stressful his day had been. He kissed me on the cheek, just a quick peck, the kind married people give each other when they've been together for 7 years, and kisses have become routine instead of romantic. Then he headed straight to the kitchen, saying something about wanting to make dinner to relax. I was sitting on the couch with my laptop, finishing up a design project for a client. The deadline was tomorrow morning, and I was trying to get the color scheme just right. Our apartment was quiet, except for the clicking of my keyboard and the sounds of Brandon moving around in the kitchen, the refrigerator opening and closing, the knife against the cutting board, water running in the sink, all the normal sounds of an ordinary evening. Around 7 o'clock, I heard his phone buzz on the coffee table next to me. He'd left it there when he went to cook. Brandon did that a lot, left his phone lying around while he was making dinner. He always said he wanted to disconnect, to focus on something that didn't involve screens and emails and work stress. I'd always thought it was sweet. Now I know it was just carelessness. I glanced at the phone screen when it lit up, not really thinking anything of it. Just a casual look, the way you might glance at a TV screen that suddenly turns on. But what I saw made my whole body go cold. The message notification sat right there on his lock screen. "I miss you, baby. Can't wait to see you again." The sender was saved in his phone as Natalie Office. I stared at those words. Read them once, twice, 3 times. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Natalie was Brandon's secretary. He'd mentioned her before, but always in passing, always professionally. Natalie scheduled my meetings today. Natalie reminded me about the client call. Natalie ordered lunch for the office. Never anything that would make me suspicious. Never anything that would make me think twice. But this message. There was nothing professional about this message. My hands started shaking. I could hear Brandon in the kitchen, humming some tune I didn't recognize, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. Part of me wanted to march in there right then and throw the phone at his head. Demand to know who Natalie really was and what "I miss you, baby" meant. But another part of me, the part that needed absolute proof, that needed to be completely sure before I accused my husband of 7 years of cheating, that part made me stay quiet. I picked up his phone. My fingers trembled as I entered his passcode. We'd never had secrets about our phones. I knew his code, he knew mine. We trusted each other, or at least, I'd trusted him. The phone unlocked, and I opened his messages with Natalie. What I found there made me feel like I was falling through the floor. The messages went back months. Months. Little flirty comments about how good he looked in meetings, late-night texts saying she couldn't stop thinking about him, and then the more explicit ones. "I can still smell your cologne on my skin. Last night was incredible. When can we do that again?" I scrolled back further, my vision blurring with tears that I refused to let fall. Not yet, not until I knew everything. There were messages about hotel rooms, about business trips that I'd believed were actually for work, about stolen moments in his office after everyone else had gone home. My stomach twisted into knots. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might be sick. But underneath the pain and shock, anger was building, cold, sharp anger that cleared my head and helped me think. I needed proof, not just messages. I could read proof that would be undeniable, proof that he couldn't talk his way out of or explain away. Before I could second-guess myself, I typed a response, pretending to be Brandon. "Come over tonight. My wife isn't home today." I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I hit send. I put his phone back exactly where he'd left it and returned to my laptop, pretending to work. But I couldn't focus on anything except the pounding of my heart and the sound of Brandon in the kitchen, still humming, still chopping vegetables, still acting like everything was perfectly normal, like he wasn't destroying our marriage, like he hadn't been lying to me for months. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I kept glancing at his phone, waiting. Then it buzzed again. I grabbed it, unlocked it, read Natalie's response. "Really? Oh my God, I've been waiting for this. Your place? I'll be there in 30 minutes. I've been wanting to see where you live, where we could be together without hiding. I love you so much, Brandon." Each word was like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. I love you. They weren't just sleeping together. They were in love. This wasn't some stupid mistake or one-time thing. This was a full affair, with emotions and feelings and promises. I carefully deleted the messages I'd sent from his phone and put it back on the coffee table. My hands were steady now, even though everything inside me was screaming. I sat back down on the couch and stared at my laptop screen without seeing anything. 25 minutes crawled by like hours. I watched the clock on my computer. Each minute felt like an eternity. Brandon came out of the kitchen at one point, smiling at me, asking if I wanted wine with dinner. I somehow managed to say, "No thank you," my voice sounding normal, even though everything was falling apart. He went back to cooking. I sat there, waiting. And then, exactly 30 minutes after I'd sent that message, the doorbell rang. The sound cut through the apartment, sharp and final. Brandon looked up from the kitchen, confused. "Were you expecting someone?" he asked me. I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. "You?" I finally managed to ask. "No, nobody," he said. But I saw it just a flicker across his face. Worry. Something. He walked toward the door, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. I followed a few steps behind, my whole body tense. Brandon reached for the doorknob, then stopped. He pulled his phone from his pocket and glanced at the screen. I watched his face change. The confusion melted away, replaced by something I'd never seen on my husband's face before. Pure, absolute terror. His hand on the doorknob started shaking. "Brandon?" I said, keeping my voice calm. "Aren't you going to answer it?" He looked at me, and for just a second I saw guilt flash across his features. Yeah. But he didn't open the door. The doorbell rang again. Brandon's hand stayed frozen on that doorknob, like he'd forgotten how doors worked. The doorbell rang a third time, more insistent now, and I could hear the impatience in it. Someone was waiting, someone who'd been invited. Someone who thought she was about to walk into an empty apartment with my husband. "It's probably just a delivery or something," Brandon said, and his voice came out all wrong, too high, too tight, like he was trying to convince himself more than me. I crossed my arms and leaned against the wall, watching him. "Then open it," I said simply. He turned back to the door, and I saw him take a breath, trying to compose himself. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Slowly, like he was moving through water, he turned the doorknob and pulled the door open just a crack. He positioned his body in the opening, blocking whoever was outside from coming in, or even seeing past him into our apartment. "Brandon!" a female voice called out, bright and excited and completely clueless. "I got here as fast as I could. I brought wine and..." The voice cut off abruptly, and I knew she'd seen something. Probably the expression on Brandon's face. Probably the panic in his eyes. I stepped closer, curiosity mixing with my anger. I needed to see her. Needed to see the woman who'd been sleeping with my husband for months. The woman he'd been texting "I love you" to while lying next to me in bed. I pushed past Brandon, not roughly, but firmly enough that he had to move aside. And there she was. Natalie Pierce was beautiful. I'd known she would be, but seeing her in person was still a shock. She was in her late 20s, with long dark hair that fell in perfect waves over her shoulders. She wore a tight red dress that showed off her figure, and heels that made her legs look impossibly long. She was holding a bottle of wine that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, and she was staring at me like I was a ghost. Who are you?" Natalie asked, though I could see the realization already dawning on her face. Her eyes went wide, and the color started draining from her cheeks. "I'm his wife," I said, my voice cold and steady. Natalie's mouth opened and closed. She looked at Brandon, then back at me, then at Brandon again. "Brandon? What's going on? You said. You texted me that." She trailed off as understanding hit her fully. She'd been set up. The text hadn't come from Brandon at all. Brandon finally found his voice, though it came out strangled and desperate. "Natalie, what are you doing here? I never." He couldn't even finish a sentence. He was trying to deny it, trying to pretend he had no idea why his secretary was standing at our door, dressed like she was going on a date, holding expensive wine, talking about rushing over here. It would have been funny if it wasn't destroying my life. "He didn't text you," I said, cutting through Brandon's pathetic stammering. "I did, using his phone, after I read all your messages to him." I held up Brandon's phone, which I'd grabbed from the coffee table on my way to the door. "All the "I love yous," all the descriptions of your hotel meetings, all of it." Natalie's face went from pale to completely white. The bottle of wine in her hand tilted dangerously, and for a second I thought she might drop it. We," she stammered, looking between us. "How long?" I asked, directing the question at both of them. Neither answered. Brandon was staring at his feet. Natalie was staring at Brandon, probably waiting for him to tell her what to do, how to handle this. But Brandon had nothing. He was completely frozen. "How long?" I repeated, my voice sharper. 6 months, Natalie whispered. 6 months. Half a year. All those business trips, all those late nights, all those mornings when he'd come home smelling like shower gel, claiming he'd worked out at the office gym. 6 months of lies, every single day. Then, from behind Natalie, I heard a male voice, deep and shaking with barely controlled rage. "So it's true." Everyone froze. It was like time stopped completely. A man stepped out from the side of the doorway, where he'd been hidden in the shadows of the hallway. He was tall, probably over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the kind of build that suggested he worked out regularly. His face was twisted, with a combination of fury and heartbreak that I recognized because I felt the same thing burning in my own chest. Brandon's face didn't just go pale, it went completely white, like every drop of blood had just evacuated his body. His eyes went wide, and he actually took a step backward into the apartment. "Dennis," Natalie whispered, and her voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear it. Dennis. The name clicked into place. This was Natalie's husband. He'd followed her here. "You're the one," Dennis said, staring at Brandon with pure hatred. "You're the one who's been sleeping with my wife." The hallway went completely silent, except for the beeping kitchen timer inside our apartment, still reminding us about the burning dinner that nobody cared about anymore. Dennis stepped fully into view, and I got a better look at him. He was handsome in a rugged way, with dark hair starting to grey at the temples, and lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled a lot, or used to smile a lot. Right now, his face showed nothing but pain. "Dennis, I can explain," Natalie started, reaching toward him. "Don't." He held up his hand, stopping her. "Just don't." His voice cracked on that last word, and I heard all the hurt behind it. I looked at this man, this stranger, and felt an instant connection. We were the same, him and me, both betrayed, both lied to, both standing in a hallway, watching our marriages crumble. Dennis looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw recognition in his eyes. "You're his wife?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes, and I'm guessing you're hers." "Married for 3 years, Dennis said, his voice hollow. "Together for 5. I've suspected something was going on for weeks now. The late nights, at work." He said the word with bitter sarcasm. "The secrecy with her phone. The new lingerie I never got to see her wear." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I checked her phone tonight while she was in the shower. Saw messages from him. Saw this address. I followed her here to see if it was real." Dennis turned his attention back to Brandon, and the look he gave my husband could have melted steel. "And here you are." Brandon cleared his throat, and I could see him trying to pull himself together, trying to find some way to talk himself out of this. "Look, this isn't. It's not what you think." Dennis's face contorted with rage. "Not what I think." His voice rose, echoing in the hallway. "She's at your house, dressed like that, holding wine, talking about how she rushed over here because you told her your wife wasn't home. What exactly do you think I think this is?" Brandon's mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked like a fish gasping for air. Natalie started crying, mascara beginning to run down her perfect face in black streaks. "Dennis, please, can we talk about this at home? Please?" "At home?" Dennis repeated, and his voice was getting louder. "You mean the home where I've been waiting for you every night, believing your lies about overtime and work projects? That home?" He turned to me again, and his expression softened slightly. "How long have you known?" "About 3 hours," I said quietly. "I saw a message on his phone tonight. That's when I figured it out." Dennis nodded slowly, like that made sense to him. He pulled out his own phone and started scrolling through it. "I've been documenting everything since I got suspicious 2 weeks ago." He turned the phone toward me, showing me screenshots, hotel receipts, credit card charges for flowers and jewelry, text messages that made my stomach turn. "Here's where she told him she loves him more than she's ever loved anyone," Dennis said, his voice breaking. Each piece of evidence was another stab to the heart. I looked at Brandon, really looked at him, the man I'd married 7 years ago, the man who'd promised to love and cherish me, to forsake all others, and I felt something inside me harden into cold certainty. Natalie had collapsed against the doorframe, sobbing openly now. "I'm sorry, Dennis. I'm so sorry. It just happened. We didn't mean for it to go this far." Dennis's laugh was cold and sharp. It just happened? For 6 months? Hundreds of lies just happened? 6 months? I heard myself repeat, even though Natalie had already told me. Hearing it again made it feel more real, more devastating. Natalie nodded through her tears, looking at me with something that might have been guilt or might have been fear. We met when I started working at his firm. We just connected. I know it's wrong, but I fell in love with him. She said it like that made it okay. Like being in love, justified, destroying 2 marriages. Through all of this, Brandon stood there silent. He didn't defend himself. He didn't deny anything. He didn't even try to apologize. He just stood there, caught, exposed, with nowhere left to hide and no lies left to tell. Dennis looked at Brandon with such contempt that I could feel it radiating off him in waves. You know what the worst part is? His voice was quieter now, but somehow that made it more dangerous. I loved her. I would have done anything for her. And you just took her. Destroyed my life. For what? For fun? Brandon finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. Those 2 words hung in the air between us, pathetic and useless. Dennis's face contorted with rage. You're sorry? You're sorry? He stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. And for a moment, I thought he might actually hit Brandon. Part of me wanted him to. Part of me wanted to see Brandon hurt the way we were hurting. But Dennis stopped himself. He took a deep breath, his chest heaving, and turned to Natalie instead. Get your things. We need to talk, now. Then he looked at me, and his expression changed. The anger was still there. But underneath it, I saw something else. Sympathy, understanding. I'm sorry you got dragged into this, he said to me. You didn't deserve this. Before I could respond, he turned and walked away from the door, heading back toward the parking lot. His footsteps echoed in the hallway, each one sounding final, like a door closing. Natalie stood there, frozen, looking between Brandon and me. Her mascara had created dark rivers down her cheeks, and she was shaking. Brandon, she said, her voice pleading. Say something. Tell him it meant something. Tell him we're going to be together. I watched my husband's face when she said that. Watched to see if he'd agree, if he'd tell her that yes, they were going to run off together and start their new life. But Brandon just shook his head, still not making eye contact with anyone. Go, he said to Natalie. Just go. But you said, Natalie started. I said go! Brandon's voice came out harsh and loud, and Natalie flinched. She looked at me one more time, and I saw something in her expression that might have been an apology or might have been resentment. I couldn't tell and didn't care. Then she turned and ran after Dennis, her heels clicking rapidly against the floor, calling his name. The door stood open, and Brandon and I were left alone in the silence. I reached out slowly and closed the door. The click of it shutting sounded so ordinary, so normal, like we'd just said goodbye to dinner guests instead of watching our entire lives explode. I turned to face Brandon, and he was standing in the middle of our living room, looking small and pathetic. The kitchen timer was still beeping. That stupid, insistent beeping that had been going on this whole time. I walked past Brandon into the kitchen and turned it off. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise. I looked at the stove. Brandon had been making pasta my favorite. The sauce was burned, stuck to the bottom of the pan. The pasta water had boiled over. Everything was ruined, just like us. Say something, Brandon whispered from the living room. I walked back out and looked at him. Really looked at him. What do you want me to say? He ran his hands through his hair, and I noticed they were shaking. I don't know. Yell at me. Throw something. Just say something. I sat down on the couch, my legs suddenly weak. The adrenaline that had been keeping me upright was starting to fade, and exhaustion was creeping in. What do you want me to say, Brandon? That I'm angry? That I'm hurt? That I feel like my entire life has been a lie for the past 6 months? Jen, please, let me explain. Explain what? My voice came out sharper than I intended. Explain that you've been sleeping with your secretary for 6 months. That you told her you loved her. That you were planning to keep lying to me for who knows how long. Brandon sat down in the chair across from me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Good. I wanted him to cry. I wanted him to feel even a fraction of the pain that was tearing through my chest. It started out innocent, he began, and I almost laughed at that word, innocent. She was new at the firm, and I was assigned to help train her. We'd have lunch together, talk about work. She made me feel young again. Excited. I make you feel old? I asked, and I heard the bitterness in my own voice. No, Brandon shook his head frantically. No, that's not what I meant. It's just, we've been together for so long, and things had become routine. She was different. New. Different. New. Like I was an old piece of furniture he'd gotten tired of looking at. When did it become physical? I asked. I needed to know everything, even though each detail felt like swallowing broken glass. Brandon looked down at his hands. 3 months ago, we went on a business trip together to close a deal. We had drinks after the meeting. One thing led to another. Which business trip? I asked. The one to Chicago, or San Francisco, or maybe it was Boston. He flinched at each city name. Chicago. I remembered that trip. He'd called me from the hotel, told me he missed me, told me he loved me. And the whole time, she was probably right there in his room. Where? I asked. Brandon looked confused. What? Where did you sleep with her that first time? Which hotel? Jen, does it really matter? Which hotel? The Marriott downtown, he said quietly. The Marriott. I'd helped him book that hotel. I'd reminded him to pack his good suit for the client meeting. I'd kissed him goodbye at the door and told him to have a safe flight. How many times? I asked. Brandon hesitated. I don't know exactly. Guess. My voice broke, rising with all the anger and pain I'd been holding back. Maybe 20 times? 25? 25 times. 25 separate occasions where he'd made the choice to betray me. 25 times he'd kissed her, touched her, been with her, and then come home to me like nothing had happened. Did you use protection? The question came out of nowhere, but suddenly I was terrified. What if he'd brought home something worse than just lies? Brandon nodded quickly. Always. I would never put you at risk like that. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that didn't sound like me at all. How considerate of you. You'd cheat on me for 6 months, lie to me every single day, destroy our marriage, but at least you used a condom. What a gentleman. Brandon flinched, like I'd slapped him. Do you love her? The question came out quieter than the others, but it was the one I was most afraid to ask. If he'd just been having sex with her, that was one thing, but if he loved her, that meant our entire marriage was over. That meant I'd already lost him months ago. Brandon was quiet for a long time. Too long. And in that silence, I heard my answer. I thought I did, he finally said. But seeing her here tonight, seeing what this has done to you, to Dennis, I don't know what I feel anymore. He thought he loved her. Past tense, maybe, but he'd loved her. While married to me, while sharing my bed and my life and my future. I stood up, my decision already made. I want you to leave. Brandon's head snapped up. What? I want you to leave. Tonight. Pack a bag and go to a hotel, or go to your parents, or go anywhere else. But you cannot stay here. He stood too, panic flooding his face. Jen, please, we can work through this. Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever you need. I'll end things with Natalie completely. I'll quit my job if I have to. Just please. Stop, I said, holding up my hand. Just stop. I walked to the bedroom and came back with a blanket and pillow, throwing them at him. He caught them reflexively. You can sleep on the couch tonight because it's late and I don't have the energy to watch you pack. But tomorrow morning, first thing, you're gone, and then we'll figure out what happens next. Brandon stood there holding the blanket, tears running down his face. I love you, Jen. I never stopped loving you. I looked at him, at this man I'd promised forever to, and felt nothing but emptiness where my love for him used to be. If this is what your love looks like, I said quietly, then I don't want it anymore. I walked into our bedroom and locked the door behind me. I stood in the bedroom with my back against the door, listening to the silence on the other side. I heard Brandon moving around, the soft sound of him settling onto the couch. And then nothing. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels heavy and suffocating. I walked to the bed, our bed, and sat down on the edge. The sheets still smelled like his cologne from this morning. This morning, when everything had been normal. When I'd kissed him goodbye before he left for work and told him to have a good day. When I'd been planning what to make for dinner this weekend and thinking about whether we should finally book that vacation we'd been talking about. That was only 12 hours ago, but it felt like a lifetime. I lay down, still fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Natalie standing at our door in that red dress. I heard her voice saying, I love you so much, Brandon. I saw the messages on his phone. All those intimate words, meant for someone else. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up and saw messages from my best friend asking if I wanted to grab coffee tomorrow. Normal life, continuing on like nothing had changed. I couldn't bring myself to respond. How could I even begin to explain what had just happened? The tears finally came then. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but quiet tears that just kept falling. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the husband I thought I knew, for the future I'd been planning that would never exist now. I cried until my eyes were swollen and my head ached, and then I just lay there in the darkness, feeling empty. Sleep didn't come. Every hour I'd check my phone. Midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. The numbers changed, but nothing else did. The pain was still there, sharp and constant. At some point, I heard Brandon get up and go to the bathroom. I heard water running, then silence again. When morning light finally started filtering through the curtains, I dragged myself to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My eyes were red and puffy. My face was pale. I looked like a stranger. I splashed cold water on my face, but it didn't help much. I could hear movement in the living room. Brandon was awake. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and unlocked the bedroom door. Time to face this. Brandon was sitting on the couch in the same clothes from yesterday, and he looked terrible. His hair was sticking up in different directions. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. Jen, he started as soon as he saw me, but I held up my hand. I've been thinking all night, I said, my voice hoarse from crying. And I need to tell you what's going to happen. Brandon nodded, looking both hopeful and terrified. I'd rehearsed this speech in my head during those long, sleepless hours. I needed to say it clearly, without emotion clouding my words. First, you're going to pack your things and leave this apartment. You'll stay somewhere else while we figure this out. Second, you're going to end things with Natalie completely. A message, an email, however you need to do it, but it ends today. Third, you're going to tell your boss what happened and request a transfer to a different office or department, somewhere where you won't see her. Brandon was nodding eagerly. Yes, okay, anything. I'm not finished, I said, and he went quiet. Fourth, we're going to see a marriage counselor. You're going to be completely honest about everything. No more lies, no more secrets. I will, Brandon said quickly. I promise, Jen. I'll do all of that. Thank you for giving me a chance. But, I interrupted, and my voice was firm. I need you to understand something. I don't know if I can forgive this. I don't know if we can come back from this. The hope in Brandon's eyes started to fade. The counseling isn't a promise that we'll stay together, I continued. It's a chance for us to figure out if there's anything left worth saving. And if at any point I decide there isn't, you will respect that decision and let me go. No begging, no pleading, no trying to change my mind. Do you understand? Brandon's face crumpled, but he nodded. I understand. Say it, I demanded. Say you understand and that you'll respect my decision. I understand, Brandon said, his voice breaking. And I'll respect your decision, whatever you decide. I nodded. Good. Now pack your things. I want you gone in an hour. I sat on the couch and watched as Brandon moved around the apartment, gathering his belongings. He went into our bedroom. I heard drawers opening and closing, the closet door sliding. He came out with a suitcase and went into the bathroom, collecting his toiletries. It felt surreal, watching him pack, like I was in a movie about someone else's life. This wasn't supposed to happen to us. We were supposed to be different. We were supposed to be strong. Brandon brought his suitcase to the front door and then stood there, looking at me. Can I ask you something? I didn't answer, just waited. Is there any chance? His voice was small, defeated. Any hope at all? I thought about lying, thought about saying yes, just to end this conversation. But he'd lied enough for both of us. I honestly don't know, I said. Ask me again in a few months. Brandon nodded slowly. He picked up his suitcase and walked to the door. His hand was on the doorknob when he turned back one more time. I'm so sorry, Jen, for everything. I didn't respond. I just sat there, arms crossed, watching him leave. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and then I was alone. The apartment felt too big suddenly, too quiet. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, trying to figure out what to do next. How do you continue with your day when your entire life has just fallen apart? My phone rang, making me jump. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello, Jen? This is Dennis. Dennis Pierce. I sat up straighter, surprised. How did you get my number? From Natalie's phone, he said. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to check on you. See how you're doing. His voice was calm now, tired but steady. I felt a strange comfort hearing from him. He was the only person who truly understood what I was going through. I'm managing, I said. How are you? Dennis sighed heavily. I'm filing for divorce. I spent all night talking with Natalie. She finally admitted everything. The affair, the lies, all of it. I can't stay with someone who could do this to me. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I understand. I don't know yet what I'm going to do. That's fair, Dennis said. Everyone has to make their own choice about this stuff. But Jen, there's something you should know. Something Natalie told me last night that I think you need to hear. My stomach tightened. What is it? Dennis was quiet for a moment, and I could hear him taking a breath, like he was steeling himself to say something difficult. They were planning to be together. Long term, I mean. Brandon told Natalie that he was going to ask you for a divorce in a few months. The words hit me like a physical blow. My vision actually blurred for a second. What? I whispered. He didn't want to leave until after he got his promotion at work. Dennis continued, his voice gentle but firm. He wanted his finances to be more secure first. Natalie said they'd been planning it for weeks. Talking about getting an apartment together, about their future. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Brandon hadn't just been having an affair, he'd been planning to leave me. All those conversations we'd had about our future, about maybe starting a family soon, about renovating the apartment, about growing old together. He'd been lying through all of it. He'd already decided he was leaving. He'd just been waiting for the right time. "Are you still there?" Dennis asked. "Yes," I managed to say. "I'm here." "I'm sorry," Dennis said quietly. "I know this makes it worse, but I thought you deserved to know the truth, all of it." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. I needed to know that. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet apartment, processing this new information. Brandon's tears this morning, his promises to do better, his desperate pleas for another chance, all of it took on a different meaning now. He wasn't sorry he'd had an affair. He was sorry he'd gotten caught before he was ready to leave on his own terms. The pain I'd felt last night had been sharp and overwhelming, but this was different. This was clarity, cutting through all the confusion and guilt and self-doubt. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. My college friend who'd become a divorce lawyer. My finger hovered over her name for just a moment. This was it. Once I made this call, there was no going back. This would be real. I pressed the call button. She answered on the third ring. "Jen, hey, it's been forever. What's up?" I took a breath. "I need to talk to you about filing for divorce." Saying the words out loud made them real in a way nothing else had. My lawyer friend Amanda went quiet for a second. Then her voice changed, becoming softer, more careful. "Oh, Jen, I'm so sorry. Do you want to talk about it now? Or should we meet in person?" "Now is fine," I said. "I need to know what my options are." We talked for over an hour. Amanda explained the process, the timeline, what I'd need to gather in terms of documentation. She asked questions about our finances, our assets, whether we had any joint accounts or property. I answered everything mechanically, like I was discussing someone else's life. "Do you have evidence of the affair?" Amanda asked. "It might help with the settlement, depending on what you're looking for." "I have screenshots of their messages," I said. "Months' worth." "Good. Save everything." "And Jen?" Amanda's voice was gentle. "I know this is awful right now, but you're going to get through this. I've seen a lot of divorces, and the people who come out strongest are the ones who face it head-on instead of dragging it out." After we hung up, I sat there holding my phone, feeling strangely calm. I'd made a decision. That was something, at least. Something I could control when everything else felt like chaos. Over the next few days, I went through the motions of living. I told my sister first, and she came over immediately, bringing ice cream and wine and a willingness to listen to me talk for hours. Then I told my parents, which was harder. My dad got angry, actually angry, in a way I rarely saw from him. My mum just cried and held me. I told my close friends. Most of them were shocked. A few admitted they'd never really liked Brandon, which made me wonder what I'd missed. Everyone offered support, advice, shoulders to cry on. I changed the locks on the apartment. It felt petty and dramatic, but Amanda had suggested it, and honestly, I didn't want Brandon to be able to just walk in whenever he felt like it. I opened my own bank account, separate from our joint finances, and started transferring my money. I made lists of everything we owned together and everything that was just mine. And slowly, day by day, I started to feel less like I was drowning and more like I was just treading water. Brandon tried to reach out. Texts first, long, rambling messages about how sorry he was, how he'd made a terrible mistake, how he wanted to fight for us. I didn't respond. Then calls, which I let go to voicemail. Then emails. Then flowers delivered to the apartment with cards that said things like, "Please give me another chance," and "I love you." I threw the flowers away. 2 weeks after that horrible night, I got a message from him that was different from the others. It was short. "I ended things with Natalie. I told my boss everything. I've been transferred to the Boston office. I'm moving next month. Please, can we talk? Just once." I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me was glad he'd actually followed through on what I'd asked. But another part of me, the part that had talked to Dennis, that knew about Brandon's plans to leave me, felt nothing but cold detachment. I typed back, "My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings." 3 months after everything fell apart, I sat in Amanda's office, signing the divorce papers. Brandon had tried one last time to convince me to reconsider. He'd sent a long letter, handwritten, talking about how he'd been going to therapy, how he understood now what he'd thrown away, how he wanted to prove he could be the husband I deserved, but it was too late for that. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. "You okay?" Amanda asked as I signed the final page. I nodded. "Yeah, I am." And surprisingly, I meant it. The pain was still there. I didn't know if it would ever fully go away, but underneath it was something else. Relief. Freedom. The sense that I was finally moving forward instead of being stuck in that horrible night, replaying it over and over. "What happened with the other couple?" Amanda asked as she gathered the papers. "The secretary and her husband? I heard through a mutual friend that they got divorced too," I said. Apparently Natalie and Brandon didn't stay together. Once everything was out in the open, the affair just fell apart. Amanda nodded knowingly. "That happens a lot. The secrecy and excitement are part of what keeps those things going. Take that away, and there's nothing left." That night, I stood on my apartment balcony, my apartment now, just mine looking out at the city lights. I thought about that message that had changed everything. "I miss you, baby." Just a few words on a phone screen, but they'd unraveled my entire life. I thought about the doorbell ringing, about Brandon's face going pale, about Dennis stepping out of the shadows, exposing everything. In a strange way, I was grateful for that night. Grateful that I'd found out. Grateful that I hadn't wasted more years with someone who'd already decided to leave me. Grateful for Dennis, even though I barely knew him, for giving me the final piece of truth I'd needed to make my decision. I'd gotten a message from Dennis a few weeks after everything happened. He'd finalized his divorce and was moving to Seattle for a fresh start. He thanked me for my kindness that night and wished me well. I'd written back, wishing him happiness too. We were just two strangers who'd been brought together by betrayal, but I hoped he found what he was looking for. As for me, I'd thrown myself into my work. I'd taken on bigger projects, challenging myself in ways I hadn't in years. I'd reconnected with old friends I'd neglected. I'd even started dating again, nothing serious, just coffee dates and dinners, testing the waters, remembering what it felt like to be valued and appreciated. I'd learned things about myself I hadn't known, that I was stronger than I'd thought, that I could survive betrayal and come out the other side, that I deserved someone who would choose me every single day, without hesitation or doubt. The doorbell had rung that night, revealing everything. Brandon's affair, his plans to leave, the lies he'd been living. And though it had destroyed my marriage, it had also set me free. I heard through mutual friends that Brandon was struggling in Boston, that he regretted everything, that he'd asked about me multiple times, wanting to know if I was seeing anyone, if I was happy. I didn't care. That chapter of my life was closed. I'd grieved for what I'd lost, but I'd also learned from it. I'd never ignore red flags again. I'd never settle for someone who made me feel like I was routine, or old, or not enough. The city lights sparkled below me, and I smiled. Tomorrow, I had a date with someone I'd met at a coffee shop last week. He seemed nice, genuine. We'd see where it went. But even if it went nowhere, I'd be okay, because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. I didn't need someone else to complete me. I was whole on my own. The doorbell had rung that night and changed everything. But standing here now, looking out at my future instead of my past, I realized it had changed me for the better. I was free. And that was worth more than any marriage built on lies could ever be.